Faith on the campaign trail, now a big talking point. Why some Democratic hopefuls won't be discussing it with a leading Christian group in the first in the nation Iowa caucus. Plus, trade with China, what the new negotiations mean for the U.S. economy, and how the FBI is trying to keep up with cybercrime in the digital age, all to ensure the security of the nation. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. God and government coming together in the race for the White House. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Democrats on the campaign trail are talking faith. And now a major evangelical leader is responding, inviting the 2020 Democrats to an Iowa forum that's typically reserved for Republican candidates.
And a special treat tonight, Abigail Robertson joins us right here in the studio for more. Abby, this is an event that Republicans aren't necessarily a stranger to.
That's right. The Family Leadership Summit on Religion and Politics is a major campaign stop. And now the president of the Family Leader is opening it up to 7 Democrat primary candidates. We talked to Bob Vander Plaats about this summer's big event.
We're casting a vision of unity.
In an era of political division, Bob Vander Plaats wants to cut through the bad blood.
We need to bring the nation together. We're a divided country, and we all agree. You know, we have a divided country. We're polarized.
The outreach comes as 2020 Democrats are increasingly vocal about faith.
You saw somebody who was hungry, and it moved you to act. I believe we are called on to act.
I was raised in a church where my mom taught Sunday school, and I'll never forget learning that verse, that faith without works is dead.
ABC News political director Rick Klein said that's a new phenomenon.
We've known that there are Democrats who believe strongly in their faith for a long time. For whatever reason, they have seemed to be less comfortable talking about that.
That reason may just be the president. Are you surprised to see so many Democrat candidates really talking and leading with their faith?
They see an opening. And the opening is they still have a hard time believing that evangelicals can support a person like Donald Trump.
Of the 7 Democrats invited, Senator Cory Booker and Beto O'Rourke have already opted out.
To me, what that statement said is, I want to lead a divided America. I want to pit Americans against one another. I don't think America's into that today.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg put a spotlight on progressive evangelicals with a visit to former President Jimmy Carter's Sunday school class.
And Mayor Pete talks all the time about his Christian faith. It's interesting to have an openly gay man leading that part of the argument.
Vander Plaats said Buttigieg is considering the offer.
So we'd love to see Mayor Pete Buttigieg to say yes to this. And I think if he does, and I think if a couple others do, you know, it's going to force the hands of some in order to show up.
Either way, he wants to make clear this summer's forum will be a safe space.
It's a safe environment. We want a civil conversation, civil dialogue. We'd like to model to the country. We can have deep disagreements on issues, but we don't have to hate each other.
Now, Bob Vander Plaats has had his own issues with the president. In 2016, he endorsed Ted Cruz over Trump, and now Vander Plaats sees the president as a friend and says he wants what's best for President Trump because he wants what's best for America.
Abigail, a lot of critics will ask how evangelicals can support President Trump, given some of his past transgressions. How does Vander Plaats reconcile that? What does he say?
Well, what he says is essentially along the lines of, Donald Trump is certainly not the best role model for how to live a righteous life. And, you know, Jesus Christ is the standard for how we should live as Christians. So he does not see Trump as somebody to follow for that model. But he says when you put away the Twitter, when you put away some of the comments, some of the things that he's done, he believes that he has actually advanced a lot of policies that he agrees with. He really likes his stance, his pro-life stances, his pro-Israel stances. And so he says that, you know, he can support him for what he believes is righteous policy that the president is pursuing.
Yeah, policy over personality.
Yes.
All right, Abigail Robertson, thank you.
Well, 2020 candidate Amy Klobuchar is the latest Democratic hopeful to hold a Fox News town hall. Klobuchar used the event to appeal to undecided voters, laying out her plans for the economy, health care, legalizing marijuana, and prison reform. The Minnesota senator also weighed in on the president and the Russia investigation.
We want to get answers. The president should be held accountable, and that's what this is about. But by the way, as we know, being in the heartland here, that doesn't mean that we can't do two things at once, and that is push for an economic agenda for the people of this country while making sure that we have someone in the White House, which is why I'm running for president, that will obey the law and tell the truth. I think that's a minimum we should expect.
But we don't.
Klobuchar isn't the only Democratic contender to hold an event on Fox News. In April, Bernie Sanders held a town hall, and South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg has one scheduled later this month.
To the Mueller investigation, now that a House committee has voted to hold Attorney General Bill Barr in contempt of Congress, the decision heads to the full House floor. But so far, no indication from Speaker Nancy Pelosi on when that might happen.
Yes, I do agree with Chairman Adler because the administration has decided that they are not going to honor their oath of office. I'm very proud of the Judiciary Committee and the work that they have done. In terms of timing, when we're ready, we'll come to the floor. And we'll just see, because there might be some other contempt of Congress.
And the contempt charges stem from Barr refusing to turn over a fully unredacted copy of the Mueller report to Congress.
The Trump administration wants to stop federal district court judges from issuing injunctions against their policies. Vice President Mike Pence says the administration has been unfairly targeted by lower court judges, adding that it's prevented the implementation of different policies and regulations like the travel ban or banning transgender service members. Pence has announced the administration is looking for ways to take the injunction matter to the Supreme Court, saying the Supreme Court of the United States must clarify that district judges can decide no more than the cases before them.
Well, the countdown is on. The deadline President Trump set for tariff hikes on Chinese goods is about 24 hours away, but there still is a chance for a deal.
China's vice premier is at the White House tonight. He'll be talking trade with the president, even though it's caused some ups and downs on Wall Street. It appears this trade battle, has had little impact on the American economy.
CBS News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the details. Ben?
Jenna, John, the latest numbers show the economy is in a pretty good place with a steady state of growth. This news contradicts critics who feel the U.S. is headed towards a recession. The latest government figures estimated that the economy grew at a 3.2% rate in the first quarter, far better than expectations and good news after concerns about a slowdown following a strong 2018.
It's a really healthy economy, almost nothing to complain about.
Steve, talking about the wage numbers, unemployment is at a rate so low that we have not seen since December 1969. Why is that?
Yeah, that's when the Abbey Road album came out. That's how long ago it was. Employers are hiring. Every business, I talk to, whether it's from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, they say business conditions are good.
Turns out the government shutdown didn't hurt the economy like some predicted.
Strong growth, low unemployment, no inflation.
The unemployment rate is down 3.6%, the lowest in nearly 50 years.
I think you've got to tip your hat to Donald Trump and say thank you for this strong economy.
But what do you say to people who say, look, this is because of President Obama's economic policies?
Well, when we came in, the economic growth rate was 1.5. So we were limping along. And a lot of people thought a recession was right around the corner. And now we've got the economy firing on all cylinders with a growth rate twice as high.
It's that kind of growth that could propel votes for Trump in 2020.
Democrats are going to try to poo-poo the economy, but it's hard for them to do it. I mean, the polls are now showing between 70 and 80% of Americans feel the economy is in really good shape. People don't vote against prosperity, and that's what we have right now.
But we've been losing $800 billion on trade. $800 billion. We're going to stop that.
Some economists warn, however, that the effort to reduce the trade imbalance with China could throw a wrench in the economy. Now, is the China tariff hurting the economy overall?
A little bit.
Okay,
a little bit.
It is.
The big deal now for the economy is whether Trump can get this trade deal done.
Another key will come next year when America weighs in on the economy. Then, against the upcoming presidential election, it could sway swing voters one way or the other. That's the latest outside the White House. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Indiana Senator Mike Braun. Senator Braun, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, the markets still appear to be a bit jittery with these trade talks between the United States and China. How do you see all of this ending?
I tell you what, I'm glad we're still pressing forward, and I think there is some impatience, especially among folks like farmers who have been kind of at the butt of it with retaliatory tariffs. But I think we've got most of everything resolved with Mexico and Canada. I'm optimistic that we'll get maybe some discussion on the aluminum and steel tariffs to kind of get that across the finish line. When it comes to the Chinese, I was disappointed that they started backpedaling on something they had agreed to. It doesn't surprise me because I think they will continue to do, even after we flesh out an agreement, to where we'll have to keep an eye on them to see if they're adhering to it. So I know there are discussions today, and there's another round of tariffs that may be levied tomorrow. I'm hoping that that's avoided, but if not, I just need to stress we're in the driver's seat here. They depend on us a lot more than we do on them, and if we don't tackle it now, that will not be the dynamic in 5 to 10 years. So they were never going to roll over on this, because when you exhibit that kind of bad behavior, that says you got a lot of nerve to do it in the first place, and that generally means you're not going to back off easily.
Yeah. Senator, sticking overseas for just a moment, the U.S. and its allies still, of course, face nuclear threats. You're part of a group of senators backing a resolution that restates Congress's opposition to allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons. How do we contain that threat?
Well, I think they're a player like North Korea, not in the same, China is different, but Iran and North Korea, they've been kind of out there in rogue status for a long time. And again, I think the president was correct to not go along with an agreement that Israel and many others that are close to it didn't view in a favorable way, that it was going to lead to Iran gaming the system. So everything I understand, their economy is increasingly in trouble, and it's because we put hard sanctions on them, and now we're hopefully going to get our European allies to back it up. So I think anything they do is in the same category as what you might expect out of North Korea. Again, they're tenacious. They do hold on, and they really put their people, in both cases, carrying the brunt of it. They're nations that, again, behave in ways that are so different from the norm. Methods to keep it in check are going to have to be a little different from the norm.
Senator, we have to ask you, of course, about the Mueller report battle. House Democrats this week, of course, voted to hold Attorney General Barr in contempt of Congress, and it appears the entire House will have a say here soon. What's your take on all of this?
I really believe this is just another scene in a long play that's playing out and will continue to do so through the 2020 election. When the Mueller report was being so highly anticipated, most Democrats said, we trust him, he's a good man, whatever the report says, we'll run with it. Obviously, that isn't the case. And I think every little opportunity that there is, including this, will be highlighted, attempting to take it to a point of pivot. I don't think that's going to occur. And I think there's going to be a continuation of this until it's all resolved at the ballot box in 2020.
If the roles were reversed, critics might ask, in a Democratic White House and his or her administration was uncooperative with a Republican-controlled Congress with constitutional authority for oversight, would you feel the same?
I think when you, it'd be hard not to view it in the same kind of reflexive manner. I think that sadly, this kind of dialogue within politics and this kind of series of events is kind of the new way of doing business politically. I don't like it. There are many things I don't like about the institution. Along with that, I'm focusing on things that I really think are even more important: the cost of health care, infrastructure, which has been talked about, and that's not going to happen until we start living within our means. So many other problems most Hoosiers, most Americans want us to focus on. And we seem to constantly be talking about this stuff that most of mainstream America is not paying near as much attention as the folks that are in the business.
Senator Braun, we want to squeeze in one quick last question about 2020. South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg from the great state of Indiana, with which you're very familiar, said religion shouldn't be used as a cudgel. And let me quote this: as if God belonged to a political party. Then he added, I can't imagine it would be the one that sent the current president to the White House. How are Indianans responding to that?
I'd say that would be the misstep of someone that has not been engaged outside of maybe being a mayor of a town. I mean, he's a smart guy, a Rhodes Scholar, but you generally have better judgment even if you don't have the experience. You know, when I went through a campaign that had to take on 2 sitting congressmen, beat a sitting senator, and go through all that gauntlet, it was more my judgment and common sense that helped me avoid a statement like that. I think he certainly would have to prove himself in Indiana. And I think I saw the latest poll, he's maybe half of where Biden's polling and way behind Bernie Sanders. And statements like that aren't going to help him climb the ladder any.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. Senator Mike Braun, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Coming up, why the government is struggling to keep up with cybercrime. The U.S. has seized a North Korean cargo ship. The administration says it was in violation of international sanctions, but the move comes as tensions with North Korea are already heightened. Kim Jong-un's regime reportedly test-fired 2 suspected short-range missiles earlier today. It's Pyongyang's second launch within a week after an apparent short-range ballistic firing Saturday. The U.S. launched an ICBM test just 10 minutes after the North Korean launched its missiles today.
Well, the U.S. federal government faces a concerning shortage of cybersecurity workers, and a new Trump administration executive order is aiming to address that issue. Among a list of federal initiatives, the order creates a national call to action to draw attention to the need for cybersecurity workers, increases integration between different federal agencies, and creates the President's Cup Cybersecurity Competition, an annual tournament that will award one federal employee up to $25,000. Well, the FBI faces major retooling to meet the biggest security challenges of our time, cyber attacks. The Bureau must shift from visible criminal activity to tracking those hidden behind the screen. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with why that can be more difficult and how cyber range technology can help. Eric?
Well, John, when the FBI started back in 1908, there was no cyber, much less associated with a crime wave. In the last decade, however, the techno wave is forcing the Bureau to play catch-up.
We're probably 5 to 10 years behind in kind of stepping up to this challenge.
Arnold Bell worked for the FBI for 25 years, half of that time in the Cyber Crimes Division. He says during his time there, cybercrime moved from 7 or 8 on the priority list to number 3, just behind terrorism and counterintelligence.
9/11 happens. The shift obviously changes the terrorism as it should, and there's a huge focus there. But what's happened now with all the different breaches that you read about every week, it seems like, that has raised the profile of this crime type.
That delayed response means the Bureau has to work overtime, updating cyber technology and bringing in key talent to make it work.
They need highly specialized talent that does not grow on trees.
Don Murdoch is with the Institute for Cybersecurity at Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Through a series of real-life simulations on their cyber range, like the ones you see here, he trains personnel from military installations, Fortune 500 companies, and government agencies to become what are known as cyber defenders.
Once you understand how the computer systems work and how the networks work, then you can understand how to co-opt it or misuse it. And once you understand how to detect the difference, then you can learn what the attacker's doing, and then you can learn how to defend it and harden it and make it stronger.
He says a major challenge is law enforcement must play by certain rules. The criminals don't. The problem is made worse with more than 300 identified attack groups spreading worldwide, many backed by foreign intelligence.
trying to get action and trying to get intelligence and trying to get information out of some of these countries where we don't have really strong connections is a big challenge.
But Arnold Bell says, above all, talent recruitment is the biggest challenge. And it's an uphill battle because government salaries cannot traditionally compete with the private sector.
Eric, salary is always a bit of a factor, but aside from the salary issue, what can the Bureau do to attract more talent?
Well, Arnold Bell says it begins with recruiting at the college level, grooming students who excel at science, math, and technology to consider a career with the Bureau. Also offering internships to give prospective candidates an up-close look at how the Bureau works and its mission. And last, but certainly not least, offering scholarships and/or some kind of loan relief could be key in recruiting those who are facing mounting college debt.
All right, national security correspondent Eric Phillips. Thanks, Eric.
Well, a co-founder of Facebook says it's time for the company to split up. In a New York Times op-ed, Chris Hughes calls on the government to break up the social media giant, saying, quote, "We are a nation with a tradition of reining in monopolies, no matter how well-intentioned the leaders of these companies may be." And adding, the power of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is unprecedented and un-American. The company controls Facebook, Instagram, and the messaging platform WhatsApp.
When we come back, a look at how Israelis stopped to honor lives lost protecting the Jewish state.
Israelis are celebrating Independence Day today. It comes just a day after the nation paused to mark Israel's Memorial Day.
That's right. People there took time to remember Israeli soldiers and terror victims against the backdrop of a continuing threat from Iran. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
Israel came to a standstill as a 2-minute siren wailed across the country to honor the memory of Israel's fallen.
I was thinking about all the soldiers from the beginning of, the state of Israel up until today who had to fight on the front lines and the home front as well, and the civilians too.
I was praying for the families who have lost somebody, including my own family, and just praying that God should give them comfort.
Speaking at the state ceremony in Jerusalem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to the most recent threat from Iran after Tehran said it would continue its nuclear program.
We will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. We will continue to fight those who seek to take our lives, and we will thrust our roots even deeper into the soil of our homeland.
More than 23,000 Israeli and Jewish soldiers and more than 3,100 terror victims have fallen since 1860. About 1 million Israelis were expected to visit cemeteries throughout the day.
It's an amazing place to live, but if you don't appreciate what has been given for this freedom we have, then maybe you don't deserve it.
Just days before Memorial Day, 4 more Israelis were killed when terror groups launched some 700 rockets at southern Israel from the Gaza Strip. But despite the trouble, most Israelis had good things to say about their country.
It's the most amazing country in the world. I believe that redemption will come from here. I think God is as close as he is to the earth here in Israel.
I literally wake up every day and thank God that I found my way here in my late 60s. It is the most amazing place in the world.
That's what I love about Israel, that we never give up. Even if it doesn't work the first time, we try again, and I love it.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thank you, Julie. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.